Hi everybody, welcome back to the show. Today I want to talk a bit about one of my most anticipated games of next year, 2020, and that is New World. This was originally an open world sandbox survival game along the lines of titles like Rust and Ark, but it's changed quite dramatically. They had some alpha testing earlier in 2019, and reception was kind of lukewarm, enough so that they decided to actually make some major revamps to the title, and now it's shifted focus away from survival and more towards a traditional open world MMO, as they're calling it. Although I'm hesitant to call it an MMO in the sense that we might be thinking there are no classes, they aren't what we expect from like dungeons and raids. There is still character progression though, and you're still in a world with up to 1,000 other players, and I still think it sounds pretty interesting. So I want to talk a bit about what has changed and what the game is at the moment. So let's go over the features of the game, starting with the world. It takes place on an island that's one big seamless open space with various biomes, and we're going to be dropped there, setting out to explore, gather resources, build up our character while defeating wildlife and occasionally fighting other players. The story behind it is that the island is filled with this magical substance called Azoth, and other people have gone there to try to gain control of it, but it corrupted them, and we're going to be the ones who don't get corrupted apparently. Now they've shown various screenshots and a bit of footage of the several types of biomes, and it's a really pretty looking environment. Like, I think it's going to be a cool space to explore. I want to move on though to talk a little bit about the combat. So the game is an action combat game. It's going to require aiming of your attacks. There's no tab targeting, there's no lock-on abilities, and they've said in interviews that they've been inspired by titles like Dark Souls, although it's going to be a bit more accessible and not quite as punishing, but that's kind of the angle that they're looking to go with the game's combat. With combat, we have to talk about our characters and the customization. So there are no classes in the game. You're not going to be picking like a mage or a rogue. Customization is going to come through the weapons that you pick, as well as armor and your attributes. So let's start off with the weapons. There's a weapon mastery system, and how this works is as you use weapons, they will level up, and then you can pick a path in a skill tree for that weapon that lets you choose how you want to improve it. So as an example, they said that you could be a character using a sword and a shield, and you can choose to go more along the lines of a supportive tank, getting in there and soaking up damage and taunting enemies, or you could go towards frontline vanguard fighter, where you're dealing more damage and being more aggressive. There's also going to be weapon quick slots. This basically lets you swap instantly from the different types of weapons, ranged, melee, or magical. Characters aren't going to be shoehorned into one particular role. You'll have the ability to swap weapons on the fly, and then it's how you choose to spend your time, level up those weapons, that's going to determine kind of where your strengths are. Now, besides actual weapon attacks, the game is also going to have abilities with cooldowns, and there will be magic as well. I don't think I've seen a character cast a fireball, for instance, but they have said magic is part of the game. Again, it takes place on an island that's all about this magical resource Azoth that we're trying to obtain and imbue our characters with. So I'm going to be interested to see how far along the magic tree they go. I imagine at the very least there's going to be some sort of supportive bolstering abilities or healing abilities. I'm curious though if we're going to see like lightning bolts and fireballs. I'm really not sure. Also worth noting, the game has player collision. So what that means is if there's two characters walking around in the world, how do I show this to you guys? That means if there's two characters walking around, you guys will bump into each other. In combat, that can actually be really interesting, especially in PvP. It just makes for more strategic play. You have to worry if you're lining up a shot, if your ally standing in front of you, they could potentially block it with their body. The problem with player collision though comes in same faction friendly griefing, where if you got one player in the world, maybe he's just gathering resources, and then a group of 5 people just go surround him so that he literally can't escape. I'm not sure if they've thought of ways to circumvent that. And then one more thing about customization, besides the weapons and the skill trees, there's also attribute points in the game. As you level up, you'll acquire new attribute points, and then you can use those to customize your character, whether you want to invest in strength, dexterity, or spirit, which will bolster your abilities in melee, ranged, or magical skills, basically. Now let's talk for a little bit about PvP. PvP is still a big focus of this game, but it's not just free-form, open world, anyone can kill you at any time anymore. It's more of an activity that you choose to participate in. Now, one of the biggest aspects of this game is going to be territory control. So we got our characters, we start them, we go out there, we gather resources, we meet other people, and we work towards this process of going into these these territories, fighting for control of them, and then claiming settlements for our guilds, or what they're called in this game is companies. The world's going to consist of various territories, and each territory has its own player-run settlement within it. So companies will be fighting for control of those settlements. They'll move into a territory, conquer and attempt to claim it, and then they must fend off other players in this large-scale 50 versus 50 battle, and the winner will gain control of that territory settlement. They have said that they are aiming to have skill matter more than player level. They said that, for example, a level 40 character could kill a level 50 character. How you use your abilities and positioning and making sure you're hitting your attacks and dodging enemy attacks will be more important than the levels between the two characters. Now, going back to the territories, once your company has fought for and won and claimed a settlement within a territory, the settlement then becomes a place for players to gather, to get quests, to craft, and to trade. There will be a player-run economy, and the owners of the settlement can set the tax rate as well as crafting fees, and they also get to choose how they want to upgrade the settlements and specialize them. Like if they want their settlement to be the best place to go to do your blacksmithing because they have the highest tier forge, for example, that's something that the owners of the settlements get to choose to do. And again, it's going to be kind of a back and forth. Just because a company owns a settlement doesn't mean it's like that for the rest of history on that server. There will be marked battle times where other companies can come in and try to claim that settlement for their own. And to help with this, they're going to be setting up this 3-player faction system. There are going to be 3 different factions within the game that players can choose to be a part of, and they're using this to help split up the server and stop one company from becoming too powerful. So once you pick a player faction, as you play the game, you will contribute to that faction, making them stronger, and then the factions can declare war on each other. Now, what would probably be the best thing to do is make it so that if there is a faction with a smaller population, have some sort of stat boost for them, because otherwise this isn't going to help at all from one company becoming too powerful. You're going to need those smaller factions to have some sort of a boost to help offset that. That's really the only way a system like this will work. And while we're on the discussion of factions and servers and companies, the servers are going to be persistent, and they're shooting for about 1,000 players each, although they're going to work to push that number higher. So you will have a server with the island of New World. There'll be about 1,000 people within that server that you'll be constantly interacting with and fighting for control of territories or working with for some of the other stuff. And again, PvP is optional now. It's not a forced open world thing. While you're in your settlement or house, it's something that you can basically toggle on and off. And then of course there is the PvP around the fight for control of the territories, which is something that you opt in to participate in. So now that we've talked about PvP, let's move on over to PvE. This is something that they're pushing. The island is filled with tons of cursed enemies and wildlife that you'll have to fight to collect items and resources that you need for crafting and powering up your character. There's also going to be some form of challenging 5-player group content for some high value resources. This is especially true in those Azoth magical resource locations. There will be big enemies for you to fight and take on with groups of players. And there's also invasions from corrupt enemies. So once you have a company that owns a settlement, it's not just another company in another faction coming to try to fight you for that you have to worry about, but also the NPCs of the game can invade your settlement, and your company will have to try to fend them off. And then on top of that, they talked about some guild questing in the open world, where we'll go out to hunt down specific creatures or control points of interest, and this will be for gathering items and resources as well. Now, questing is something that's fairly new that they've added into the game. Specifically, there's going to be a guided introductory experience where they take you through some of the basic mechanics and systems of the game, and this will take players apparently from level 1 to 10 until they reach their first territory and settlement, and then from there they said the game will open up and branch out a bit more. And there's also going to be a variety of solo and small group quest options, along with community goals and milestones. So I get the sense that a lot of this questing is going to be the tutorial experience, but then just some goals for your character, like go here and collect 100 of those resources. This isn't going to be an MMO with kind of the traditional cutscenes and narrative. There is in-game lore, but a lot of that's just going to be told through tomes and things within the environment. One big thing about this game that you should know, though, is they're going to have a strong emphasis on player housing. So every single settlement within the game's various territories will have houses within it that players can purchase. Once you've purchased a house, you'll have to pay taxes to your specific settlement, but then you'll have a place that you can go to, decorate inside of the house, as well as a garden in. You'll be able to buy or craft furniture. You can hang trophies of creatures you fought. There'll even be decorations that give you temporary buffs as well. That's the basic rundown. That's basically what you can expect from New World. We're gonna make our characters, we'll be dropped on an island, and then it's just about going through that intro tutorial, getting acquainted with the various systems and mechanics, gathering resources, and just acquiring power through the leveling system and upping our attributes, through the weapons that we specialize in, through going out and finding more powerful weapons and armor and getting access to magical abilities and imbuing our equipment, and all of that surrounded with this territory control and fighting the enemies on the island, like the wildlife or the cursed enemies that exist there, and going out and trying to gather more of these high-end resources and this magical Azoth. It's basically looking more like a big open space RPG that there'll be 1,000 other people doing what you're doing and playing with and against you to try to become powerful on your particular server. It seems to be kind of splitting the difference between that original design of hardcore survival sandbox game and more RPG MMO elements. And I'm gonna be interested to see if that's good enough, you know, if it's got enough PvP and sandbox stuff for that audience, or if it has enough kind of guided and progression-based stuff for that MMORPG audience, or maybe it's just not enough for either, and it doesn't stick at all. We don't know yet, but I'm excited to learn more. This is one of my most anticipated games of next year. I'm really hopeful for it, and I'm most certainly going to be talking about it here more on the channel. But hey, I just want more good MMO stuff to play. It's kind of an MMO. Not really, but you know, there's not a lot of MMOs coming out in general, so I'll take what I can get, okay?